Welcome to Wealth Matters Podcast. I have Sean Christopher with me today. How are you, Sean?
I'm doing great, Alpesh. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for having me on.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for taking time out during Thanksgiving week. Hey,
Absolutely.
Sean, so can you tell my listeners what do you do full time?
Sure. Well, I own a real estate development company in Baltimore, Maryland, and a lot of people ask me the question, why did you? Is there a reason why you decided to start your company in Baltimore, Maryland? You know, of all the cities that you
Right.
could start a business in, is there a reason you chose Baltimore? And yes, there actually is a reason. As a matter of fact, I actually am originally from New York, but picked up
Oh,
my
okay.
family. Yeah, but I picked up my family and we relocated to Baltimore about 10 years ago,
Oh, wow.
specifically to do real estate in Baltimore because unbeknownst to a lot of people, Baltimore is the top grossing rental market in the nation. So what does that mean? Well, that means if you're investing in Baltimore, you're making more money than you're going to make in most other cities in the United States. So that's why Baltimore. And so we developed Turnkey real estate in Baltimore, and I've been doing that for about 10 years now. I've been in the real estate business for about 20 years, but developing
Wow.
turnkey real estate for about 10 years now.
Awesome. So how did you get started with real estate?
Oh man, honestly, the way that I got started in real estate is I owned a mortgage brokerage firm prior to being
Oh,
in the real estate business. Yeah. And so my brokerage firm, my mortgage firm was so successful that I actually started having real estate companies call me and say, "Can we pay you to teach our realtors how to close more business?" And sure, why not?
right.
As a mortgage broker, it benefited me to have realtors that were going to send me business. So that's when I kind of started getting into the real estate business. And as I started digging in more to real estate, I became very interested in flipping. That was how I first got into the business.
Okay.
Was getting into flipping, and then I got interested in purchasing rental properties, and now I'm even in the multifamily market as well. But it all started way back when I got a phone call from a guy that just asked me to help his sales team close more business, and it kind of took off from there. So funny how life works.
That's awesome. So, what
Yeah.
inspired you to become an entrepreneur or business owner?
Oh man, you know what, Alpesh, I can't work in an office.
so, so,
um,
so
I'm
you
I'm a very
you're
free
like me,
spirit.
right? No, yeah,
Yeah.
we can't be hired. We are unemployable officially.
No, I'm a very free spirit. I have not worked. I mean, I can't even imagine having to work for someone and to have to come into an office all the time. And so, which you know what, for your listeners that are hearing this, I'm sure there's probably some people that are listening to this and they're saying, "Man, that's what I have to do," you
Right.
know. And there's good news for you because
Yep.
you learn real estate. And
Exactly.
I'll tell you what real estate is for me, Alpesh. It's freedom. It's
Uh-huh.
freedom.
I agree.
Um, that's what real estate is for me. It's freedom. And so to me, the freedom that real estate provides, the freedom it provides for me, for my family, I'm very thankful that I'm able to do nice things. I have 3 children who I love more than anything. I'm able to do nice things for my children,
Awesome.
take them on nice vacations. I've been able to plan for their future, and that's all thanks to real estate. And so it's not easy to learn, but you just have to find the right people, such as yourself or myself, who you can
Right.
work with, and you can start buying real estate from people that are extremely knowledgeable and know what they're doing. And in my opinion, that's the best way to get into real estate, is working with people that are knowledgeable, that know the real estate market, know where to go to find the best
Right.
deals. And that's kind of how you put your foot in the door, so to speak, in the real estate business.
Well, those are some great advice today, huh? So I
Yeah.
want to talk about the market, right? So and when you
Yep.
and I chatted, you and I did not hear about Baltimore market, right? So
Right.
Can you tell us more about Baltimore market? What's the growth? Why it's most grossing rental market? What are the things going for in Baltimore?
Sure. So there has been significant growth in the Baltimore rental market over, I would say, especially over the last 5 years. And let me explain a little bit why that is. So about 5 years ago, the governor of Maryland committed $400 million to renovating various neighborhoods in Baltimore. Yeah, it was a really big deal.
Good chunk of money.
a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yes. And shortly after that, Kevin Plank, who is the CEO of Under Armour, which is a very large company that oftentimes rivals Nike from a competition standpoint. Kevin Plank, along with Goldman Sachs, committed $233 million to renovating various areas of Baltimore. And so there's all this money being poured into Baltimore. An interesting point that I'll bring up for your listeners is that one of my big beliefs, Alpesh, is that we never need to recreate the wheel. Find someone who has what you want, do what they do, and you'll have what they have.
Exactly.
Right? If that makes sense. So Kevin Plank, who is the CEO of Under Armour, he owns 8,000 rental properties in the city of Baltimore. So that ought to tell you something right there, right? So if one of the CEOs of the largest corporations in America chooses Baltimore for his rental properties, it says something, because he doesn't have to buy in Baltimore. He can buy anywhere he wants.
Or he doesn't even need to own real estate. So that shows that, because he's got a big enterprise, right? So he doesn't even need to invest in real estate or in Baltimore, but that shows that he believes in real estate as well as the Baltimore market.
Exactly. So there's just all these things, Alpesh, just going into driving the Baltimore market. We have a blog post on our website that I would encourage people to go to that talks about. I could literally sit here for hours and talk to you about all the amazing things that have been happening in Baltimore. But those two things that I mentioned a few minutes ago, the 400 million and the 233 million, and then we have Johns Hopkins Hospital that's in Baltimore, which is the number one rated hospital in the entire nation. And then we have a number of other things too. The U.S. government has actually been relocating a lot of their resources up into Baltimore. It's only about a 45 to an hour minute drive from Washington, D.C. And because D.C. is so expensive, the government has even been relocating some of their offices up into Baltimore. You can now take the subway and or the train from Washington, D.C. all the way up into Baltimore. So now you can even get public transportation from Washington, D.C. all the way up into Baltimore. So people are starting to take a much closer look at Baltimore. And so there's all these factors that are driving the market. The job market in Baltimore is booming. There's this top 10 list that you can actually look at on our website, and Baltimore ranks in the top 10 in the entire nation for a number of different categories. And so the job market in Baltimore is booming. So there's so many things that are happening that are driving the rental market. And frankly, one of the reasons why the rental market is so good in Baltimore has a lot to do with Washington, D.C. It's very expensive.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. It's very expensive to live and to own or to rent in Washington, D.C. And so that drives the market a lot too. So a typical 2-bedroom house in Baltimore is renting for somewhere around a 3-bedroom house. A 3-bedroom house in Baltimore is renting for right around $1,300 a month. A 4-bedroom house is renting for around $1,600 a month. And a 5-bedroom house is renting for around $1,800 a month. So it's just, it's amazing. Now here's the thing, right? So this is our model in Baltimore, and this is why I have sold hundreds of properties to investors just in the last year alone. We do a lot of business in Baltimore. We do have property management and tenant placement in place. We can talk about that later in the conversation. But because our model is to go into, our model is to look at so again, it's about not recreating the wheel, copy what someone's already doing. So what we do is we go into the neighborhoods that are already experiencing renovation. So the neighborhoods that are being renovated by this big $400 million grant from the state of Maryland, from this $233 million grant from Under Armour and Goldman Sachs. And we're going into those neighborhoods, and that's where we're picking up properties.
Interesting.
And we're advising our investors to pick up properties too. So they're typically a C neighborhood, but the advantage to the investor is they're a C neighborhood that's very quickly on its way to a B neighborhood. The biggest advantage to the investor is the entry price point, which you and I already talked about the other week. You know, you can buy a house in these neighborhoods for somewhere around 65 to, I would say, $85,000.
Wow, that's pretty cheap.
And it is. And so that $65,000 to $85,000 house is renting between $1,300 to $1,800 a month. It's a very good return. So our investors, on average, are seeing about a 20% return on their money in Baltimore. I mean, you're whatever you're investing in right now. I mean, for your listeners, whatever you're investing in, wouldn't you love to get a 20% return on your money? It's fantastic, right?
No, that's
kind of what's going on in Baltimore.
So,
right
how come no one has heard about Baltimore market? That's the question I always had, right?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing, Alpesh, right? A lot of people have heard of it because I'm selling hundreds of houses every year, right? So a lot of people have heard of it, but I like to say, this is what I say, right? I say Baltimore is one of the nation's most well-kept secrets, because here's a big reason why, right? Investors like to invest in what I call sexy markets, right? So California is a sexy market.
Yeah.
Florida would also be considered a quote unquote sexy market. Yeah. So investors like to invest in those neighborhoods where it's just, you know, it has a lot of appeal to it. So Baltimore doesn't have a lot of appeal other than the fact that you're going to make more for your money there than anywhere else. That should be the only thing that matters. If you're an investor,
if you're an investor,
on one thing, and that's ROI. If you're an investor, it's ROI. You're an investor, it's ROI. But the reality of the world that we live in, you know this just as well as I do, is investors don't always focus on that ROI. Here's another thing. Most investors have been trained by I would say society's norm to invest in their own backyard, right? Because it makes sense. Now I know you don't do that because you and I talked about that.
Exactly. I always tell that live where you want, invest where the numbers make sense, right?
Exactly. So, but a lot of investors don't do that. They think that they should just invest in their own backyard. It's a terrible decision to make because 9 times out of 10, you're not going to make the most money in your own backyard. So this is what Alpesh, what I tell investors that are on the fence about investing out of their own backyard. I ask them if they invest in the stock market. Most of them do.
Yes, of course.
So would you only invest in a company? If you're buying stocks and you're investing in stocks, would you only invest in a company that's in your own backyard?
Right.
Of course not. Of course not. You would never do that. So here's the thing. We need to create a new shift in our mentality in the real estate business. And frankly, I'm on a mission with my company to help recreate that not recreate, but to create that shift and help to change people's mindsets, because I want to see investors get free. I want to see investors get the freedom that they desire, and you're going to have that freedom a lot faster if you're investing in Baltimore than anywhere else because of the great returns. And so what I try to do is help people to open up their minds and to have a little bit of a new mindset shift and understand that the former way of thinking of things is not the best way.
Right.
We need to look at things differently, and we need to understand that investing out of our own backyards is not the smartest thing to do. We have to find the markets where we're going to get the most for our money, and it's probably not your own backyard.
Yeah, totally agree. Thank you so much, Sean. Let's take a quick break.
Absolutely.
Welcome back to Wealth Matters Podcast. I'm chatting with Sean here today from Bluewater Investments, and we are discussing about why Baltimore market is a great rental market. So before we took the break, Sean gave really good ideas at least I understood why Baltimore market. So I want to ask one more question, because you mentioned see a neighborhood and that can turn into B neighborhood, but what do you see in the future, right? Because you keep hearing there are some investors there, they are just sitting on sideline for last 5 years thinking, oh, the market's going to correct and then we're going to swoop in and buy. So do you anticipate a downturn, and what would happen to this rental properties during that downturn?
Yeah, here's the thing, Alpesh. The short answer to your question is no, and let me explain to you why my answer is no. So the real estate business is a lot different than I'm gonna use the analogy of comparing it to stocks, because when the stock market crashes, it's a really, really big deal, right?
Yes.
But the real estate market always comes back around. I've never seen it not come back around. So there might be a little bit of a crash where the values of the properties go down, but it's not so big that it's not correctable, and it always comes
Right.
back around. So and the other thing with real estate is you have an insured, appreciating, tangible asset.
You have a real asset.
To, you know what I'm saying, as opposed to if you're investing in stocks.
Wow.
So and stocks are just extremely volatile, and I always encourage people. I always would choose real estate over stocks any day. But the thing with real estate, and again, why I like Baltimore so much, is there's so much activity going on right now that, to be quite honest with you, for the investors that don't invest now, they're going to regret it.
Right.
Because what's happening in Baltimore, Alpesh, is the same thing that happened in New York City, that happened in Chicago. Oh. So for your listeners, I'm sure people are familiar with the term urban revitalization.
Right.
So you're seeing, in people that years ago invested in New York and Chicago are billionaires right now.
Right. Yep.
Because they invested in these same types of neighborhoods in New York and Chicago, just like in Baltimore. And these investors are billionaires right now. So they saw an opportunity, and let's be honest, at the end of the day, any opportunity has its risks involved. Right. But most of the risks are mitigated in real estate, and that's why I like real estate so much. So so there's a downward turn in the market, the value goes down a little bit, but you're still going to get your cash flow no matter what. So that's the thing. And again, that's why I like Baltimore. The cash flow is so good at that. Like I said, it's an average of about a 20% return.
That's crazy.
So the cash flow is so and Alpesh, let me just mention this too for your viewers here. So you buy a property in Baltimore, do you realize where can you go to buy a property where you fully recoup your money in less than 5 years?
That's crazy. Right? That's the most important thing, right? Return of your principal. Then you are playing on house money.
Yes. So with Baltimore, because the returns are so good, you fully recoup your money in less than 5 years on a property you buy. So who cares what the market does? Like I said, you're playing with house money. So appreciation is kind of icing on the cake. Now, years ago, it's funny. One thing you'll learn about me is I love a good challenge, right? And so an investor friend of mine actually years ago said to me, he said, I'm going to tell you something about Baltimore. He said, investors either want cash flow or appreciation, but you can't have both. And I looked at him and I said, I don't know. So I kind of was on a mission to prove that wrong. And part of my mission to prove that wrong has been basically what we're doing right now, where I found the neighborhoods where that was wrong, where you could have appreciation and cash flow. And so if there's, but the advantage to the investor that is your safety net is the cash flow is so good. And because you can recoup your money in less than 5 years, you're in a really good shape regardless of what the market does.
Right. No, that's great. Hey, so you kind of mentioned that you also have property management arm. So how does the property management side work?
Yeah, so for an out-of-state investor, and I would imagine that you have listeners from all over the country, maybe even over the world that listen to your show. If you're going to buy out of your own backyard, you need to make sure you have reliable property management in place so that the property is being taken care of, right? So our company has been doing property management in Baltimore for 25 years now. My partner actually started in property management, and so we know Baltimore really, really well, and we have a very good process in place. And that's one of the reasons why our investors like us so much, is they know that they can count on us to not just deliver them a quality property, but also deliver on the property management and the tenant placement. And you have to have that full service solution in place. And that's one of the things that makes us different than other companies, is we literally are able to provide our investors with everything they need from A to Z. We're not just providing them part of what they need, but we're providing them with everything they need. And so my partner, who heads up our property management tenant placement division, he's lived in Baltimore his entire life. I know Baltimore very well, but he knows Baltimore better than me. And so we know Baltimore, we live in Baltimore. And because of that, we're able to really keep our pulse on the market and what's going on in Baltimore. And so we know where tenants are looking for properties, and we understand the property management and the tenant placement process. And because of that, we're able to deliver after the property is sold to our investors. And that's what makes our investors really happy. And that's what makes our investors continue to keep coming back to us and buying more and more property. So having a reliable property management and tenant placement company is very, very important.
That's the most important thing, actually. Well, investing long distance, property manager is the most important person in your team.
Yes. And so there is nothing more important to me than customer service. It is the foundation of everything we stand for as a company. We have got to provide a high level of customer service to our investors. I don't just want our investors to be happy. There's a term that was coined by a gentleman, a very famous author named Seth Godin, and he calls it raving fans. And I'm a huge believer in that. I don't just want my investors to be happy. I want them to be a raving fan. I want them to be my advertisement, right? And so we're very committed to delivering a very high level of service. And I have a great team in place to do that. And it's something I'm very proud of.
That's awesome. Hey, so last thing, what's the actual process when someone wants to acquire property? So do you reach out, do you send the list of properties you have, or and are they already rented when you are marketing the properties, or how does that work?
Well, what we do is we'll speak to an investor. We'll get to understand their wants and their needs. And I emphasize wants and needs because wants are different than needs, right? And so sometimes, a lot of times we're working with newer investors where I simply just say to them, do you trust me to guide you? You know, I've been doing this for 20 years. My partner's been doing it for 25. Do you trust us to guide you through the process? And if you don't, give us time to earn that trust. Let's keep having conversations. We want to earn your trust because a lot of times I'm working with a newer investor that needs some guidance along the way, so to speak. So, for example, one of the things that is very advantageous for an investor, and it goes a little bit against what you would commonly think about, is to purchase a property that needs renovation. And so most investors would prefer to buy a property that's already renovated, it doesn't need renovation, it's either ready for a tenant or it has a tenant. So we pretty much, Alpesh, have everything. I have properties that have tenants in them that we sell to investors. I have properties that were newly renovated that need a tenant that we sell. And then I have properties that need renovation. I personally much prefer the properties that need renovation. And the reason why is because the investor is going to step into much more equity on that deal. So it only takes us about 30 days to do a renovation on a rental property. So although you may wait a little bit longer, and again, it's an impatience thing, right? I want my money to start working for me right away. But here's the thing, it is working for you right away. And that's what I try to explain to investors. If you buy a property that needs renovation, it's only going to take me about 30 days to do that renovation. Within a few weeks after that, I'll have a tenant in the property, and now your property is cash flowing. Your property, however, is worth, you're stepping into a nice amount of equity on that property because you bought it needing renovation. So when the renovation's done, the value of that property, because if I'm selling an investor a property that's already renovated, I'm going to sell it for more money because it's renovated, you know? But if I'm selling you a property that needs renovation, you're going to get a much better deal on that property. And when the renovation's done, you're stepping into a lot more equity. So I highly recommend that investors buy property that actually need renovation. You're just in the long term, it's financially the most sound decision that you can make. And so that's what I always recommend. But you know, everyone has their own idea.
Everyone has their own investment criteria. They have their own risk tolerance. So I totally agree. So awesome. Exactly. This was great. I thoroughly enjoyed our discussion. How can my listeners reach out to you?
Sure. Well, you can go to our website, which is bluewaterinvestmentproperties.com. Again, that's bluewaterinvestmentproperties.com. That's our website. Or I don't mind giving giving away my cell phone number. Investors call me every day on my cell phone. That number is 407-591-2007. Again, 407-591-2007. And if you call, just make sure you tell me that you saw me on this amazing podcast here by Alpesh, and I'll give you a little bit of an extra discount on the property. How's that?
Oh, that would be great. I appreciate it, Sean.
Absolutely.
I enjoyed our discussion.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Very much enjoyed it.